guys, welcome back to another episode of VoiceNoise. I'm Panetta. Today I'm going to be diving into something a little bit controversial. I'm going to be talking about my experiences with it, and then I'll be talking about whether or not it's an actual thing. I'm talking about range expansion. Now, for me, I was a certified baritone by the time I was 12, and all through puberty, I stayed in that range. In choirs, I was either baritone or bass, and even in my speaking voice, you can tell that I have relatively a baritone sound. It wasn't until I got into my late teens, early 20s, where I started experimenting with higher songs and higher techniques to bring my voice to that capacity. When I was in college, I hung out with a lot of musicians who were amazing and who loved playing songs by Stevie Wonder, Prince, Michael Jackson. So in the next few visits that I had with my vocal instructor, I made sure that I started getting into the techniques that would help me build my higher register in my chest voice and in my falsetto. Even getting into something called mixed voice, which is a mixture between falsetto and chest voice, to put it very, very simply. I can't say whether or not my range expanded. There is no scientific evidence that proves that range expansion, meaning that you never had that part of your register before and now you suddenly have it due to practicing and training. My belief, and again, this is the part that's controversial, my belief is that those notes that you are trying to reach or that you end up reaching and you never had them before have always actually been a part of you. How fast the air is traveling through, that the vocal tissue starts to morph and starts to understand that you are starting to sing in higher placements. I don't necessarily like calling it range expansion because that implies that it was never there to begin with. There are always limitations when it comes to how high you can go. If you're a baritone, no one's expecting you to be a countertenor. If you're a tenor, no one's expecting you to get into your bass range. You have to really understand your sound, your voice, and what your capabilities are. For me, when I started singing songs that were in the tenor range, I'm not gonna lie, I was hurting a lot of the time. I was getting a lot more gigs, but I was hurting. I would go a show and then blow my voice out. I would feel it start to burn within, the second set. So the way that I started really honing it and understanding that, take your breaks, take your time. There's no point in belting out for an entire 45-minute to an hour set if you can just strengthen your mixed voice and kind of fool the crowd a little bit. You have a microphone, utilize it. If you're singing in a recital platform, yes, of course, you're gonna wanna get those techniques down packed. You're gonna wanna understand what your voice is doing, how to take care of it, how to properly breathe through those high notes and support your sound. Let's talk about supporting for a second. Supporting basically means that you are taking care of the sound from the beginning of your note until you exhale at the end of your note or your phrase. Meaning, if you're taking in that air, and like I explained in the last episode, understanding that if you take in enough air to sing that phrase 3 times, you've taken enough air. So make sure that you're taking in that air, the nice solid breath that you need, and supporting your sound, meaning you're not exhaling right from the get-go, you're not blowing out all the air within the first couple of seconds of the note. If you have to hold those notes for a really long time, it's important to know that you have a reserve and you have to utilize it. Making sure that your straight tones, meaning no vibrato, no textures, just taking it down to brass tacks, knowing that your straight tones are clean, is when you really know that you're supporting your sound. Now, wind instruments, brass instruments will understand what I mean by straight tones because they practice them daily. Wind and brass instruments, as well as vocalists, have very similar breath technique training, and I think that we should really zone in on what they're doing as well to maintain their sound and maintain their tone and intonation, because it is just as important for us singers. So try that. Singing your straight tone, supporting your sound all the way through, no textures, taking it down to nothing, and just singing a note straight through, making sure you're not going flat or sharp or losing your air. That's supporting your sound. It's very helpful when you're singing songs and say you've forgotten to take a breath in the middle of a phrase, or you're not taking a breath where you usually take your breath because adrenaline's picking up, it's great to know that you have that reserve and you have enough stored there to be able to support you throughout the rest of your phrase. Let's go back to range enhancement. So how do these techniques help with range enhancement? If you're understanding your falsetto, if you know what falsetto is, it's your head voice. It's the part of your voice that maybe you don't use very often. But when you're singing up there in your falsetto or in your head voice, try and strengthen it. Get that falsetto nice and strong. Build it up to a point where you can start putting textures into it. You can start changing the colors of your sound. And more importantly, it gets strengthened enough to where the audience doesn't necessarily know that you're singing in head voice. Strengthen up your falsetto, build it up. And as you're training that, you're also still maintaining your chest voice and in your comfort zone. There is a little bit of a gap, especially in male vocalists. There's a bit of a break in between your chest voice and your falsetto. Try and get that gap as small as possible, meaning going up in your vocal regiment, up to the very bitter end, up until your break, stopping, and then focusing on your falsetto from that point up, and then try and bridge that gap. One of the techniques that is the most ridiculous one, in my opinion, but it actually does work, is the sigh. So if you listen very carefully, you'll hear my break happen, and it is very obvious, especially as a baritone that's trying to get into those super falsetto ranges. So listen carefully. You hear that bit of a yodel that happens there? That's my vocal break. It is so obnoxious and in your face. But by controlling the air, and what I like to call it is the hourglass. So what you're doing is you're slowing down, you're quieting your sound, you're not stopping the break, and then once you pass that break, and you'll feel when it happens, you start building up your intensity of your sound and your volume again. So listen carefully again. I'll show you the break, and then I'll show you how I mask it. So here we go. Now watch what happens here. Listen carefully, and I'll make the hand motions too, so that way you can actually see visually what I'm actually doing with my breath. Watch. Okay, so by slowing down and dropping my volume a little bit, it's still very much there, but I'm able to control and mask and bridge where my break actually happens. I feel when I pass it, and then I build up my sound again. That's how I develop my range expansion or range enhancement to be able to sing the songs that I do today. So try it. Work on those sighs. Work on your falsetto coming down, closing the gap and building it back up again until you don't hear that yodel break anymore. Female vocalists have it as well, but it is not as obnoxious as a male vocalist's break would be. But rest assured, they do have it too. So for my female vocalist friends who are out there and are struggling with something like that, this applies to you 100% as well. Try doing something like that. It's completely safe, unless you're starting your chest voice a little too soon and you start feeling the tension there. Relax. Okay, take it a little bit further. Take your falsetto further into your chest voice range, and then switch into your chest voice and build it back up again. Try that a little bit. Find slow ballad-like songs that you would actually be able to utilize this in. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work, take it to your vocal instructor, try it with them. There's nothing wrong with failing a few times. I know that I botched a lot of songs trying this technique when I was fresh and new starting it. Don't be afraid to try, and don't be discouraged if it doesn't work the first few times. Try the technique a few times, apply it to your song a few times. It's a back and forth. It's that marriage that you'll have to get used to when it comes to range enhancement. I hope this helped a little bit. I hope you find some use for it. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Give me a subscribe, give me a like, share it with your vocalist friends, and let's see if we can better ourselves as vocalists all together, so that way we can come out of this quarantine and kill it at gigs, or kill it at your next recital, or kill it for your next high school or college or university assignment. Let's see what happens. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear it. Next time, we're going to be talking about how to choose the right vocal instructor. There is a method, and I'll get into it next time I see you guys. Thanks, take care, and be safe.